this water is Colombian water. But as Jose mentioned, I come from Boston. Our offices are in Cambridge, Massachusetts. In fact, they're on the campus of MIT. And a couple of years ago, while you're getting your translations devices on, a couple of years ago, I had some people from Columbia visiting Boston for an ecosystem tour. And I was taking them around the campus of MIT and going into the various buildings and so forth. And one of the gentlemen stopped at every drinking fountain. Everyone he passed, he would stop. And he would take a drink of water. And I watched this happen over and over and over again. And I finally said, "You must be very, very thirsty." And he said, "No, not really." He said, "But I assume with all the innovative things that come out of MIT, there must be something in the water. And as long as I'm here, I want to get as much of that as I possibly can." So this isn't Cambridge water. This is Colombian water. But thank you and Rosa, thank you, and for DSF for inviting me here to speak to you today. Thank the sponsors that have made this happen, and thank you especially to the Universidad de Medellin for loaning us, providing us this wonderful space. What we're going to talk about today is this. We're going to talk about what it means to be a startup entrepreneur. And things that, the ways that we do it in the United States. And things that I've learned from my long experience as a startup entrepreneur, as an investor, as a mentor, and leading acceleration programs here in Latin America as well as in Italy. So as I said, I do come from Boston. But what is it that entrepreneurs worry about most? What do we do when we wake up in the morning? When you wake up in the morning, what do you think about? You're thinking about a couple of things. You're thinking about two very simple questions. What if, and what's next? So if we look, I'll just build this really quickly because we're behind. Everything that we see here, whether it's SpaceX, Bitcoin, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, those were all conceived by startup entrepreneurs. People like yourselves that sit here and dream big about what if and what's next. Now, they didn't come from corporations per se. Not that corporations don't innovate, and not that corporations don't start businesses, new businesses. And we're going to talk a little bit about corporations today as well. But it's people like yourselves that are sitting here saying, what if and what's next? That these kinds of amazing things come from, things that we take for granted every day. But first part of this conference is to talk about innovation. So what is innovation? Innovation is a word that's kind of become overused over the years. I can remember 15 years ago, everything was about innovation. We're innovating, we're doing this, we're doing that. And innovation, like any word that gets used too much, innovation kind of lost its meaning. What is it really? So what we're going to do first is define innovation in terms of the way that we look at innovation. So innovation, what it really is a significant movement along one or more main parameters of value. Now you're going to say, what's a main parameter of value, right? Well, I'm going to tell you, but just park that in your mind for a second. It's movement along one or more main parameters of value. And a main parameter of value is a key outcome from whatever you're doing in the product or service that is going to define, going to describe the decision-making process of the person who's going to buy it. Because innovation, we refer to those as MPVs, main parameters of value. Innovation for innovation's sake is wonderful, but it doesn't move the ball down the field in terms of how is it going to help mankind, how is it going to help society, and most importantly, and I speak to this as a venture investor, most importantly, how is it going to make money? How is it going to make money for you, the entrepreneur? How is it going to make money for the investors? And how are people's lives going to be better from that? All businesses need to do two things. All startup businesses particularly need to do things. They first need to have an economic outcome, but they also need to have a social outcome. So how are these main parameters of value, the things that make you say, I have to have that. I have to have that new iPhone. I have to start using ChatGPT more to improve the way that I can write and communicate and think through ideas. Those are all driven by main parameters of value. So why worry about MPVs? Because the ultimate goal, as I've said before, of business, of innovation, is growth and profitability. That's why we do what we do. All of you that are here as entrepreneurs today or entrepreneurs in the future. But as I said before, the main parameter of value also has to help with the upward march of humanity. So she mentioned that I have been involved in the HultPrize for many years. The HultPrize, is known as the Nobel Prize for Social Entrepreneurs. It's given by the Hult Foundation, Hult International Business School, Education First, and it goes out to every university in the world that wants to participate. Last year we had over 300,000 individual applicants. And they had to form a business, each group had to form a business that achieved whatever the social challenge that the foundation put out each year. And the businesses have to meet three criteria. First criteria is that they have to achieve the social objectives and the social metrics that are set forward for them. Secondly, it has to be market driven. It has to be something that the market needs and is something that reaches not just in one spot, but can reach globally. And lastly, it has to be for profit. Because if the business is not for profit, it can't be self-sustaining. So that's why I say businesses need two objectives. They need a business objective and they need a social objective to move forward. And then you have a true business and have a business that is going to make a big difference. Now, the whole prize, it's called the Nobel Prize for Social Entrepreneurs because one of those teams that participates for a year from all over the world ultimately ends up being awarded $1 million, just like the Nobel Prize, being awarded $1 million to start that business and drive it forward and make it go. It's a very rewarding place to be. And I've learned a lot from working with social entrepreneurs from virtually every corner of the world. But MPVs reflect, as I said before, what matters to customers. Why do you buy what you buy? If you think about why you buy what you buy, in any case, there's something that causes you to do it. There's some MPV. It makes you feel better. It makes you more productive. It makes you, maybe it has social benefit, or just look at me. I've got the newest, latest, greatest iPhone. Aren't I cool? That's an MPV. To you, wouldn't be to me, but it is to you. So, let's move to entrepreneuring, because they're the ones who take innovations, first and foremost, and move it forward. And I think as we talk about these things, we learn things from others that have come before us. And we learn by what they've done. But most importantly, we learn by things they say. So as I go through this morning, we're going to talk about things, but we're going to talk about key things that the people that I use as examples here say. And what does that tell us? And what do we learn from that? So, Who were the first entrepreneurs? Does anybody know who this is? Give that man a cigar. Yes, that's Christopher Columbus. Christopher Columbus was one of the very, very first entrepreneurs in recorded history. But entrepreneurs need gas. Entrepreneurs need fuel to drive them. So they need something, they need investors. Even Christopher Columbus needed investors. So anyone know who that is? Queen Isabella of Spain. Queen Isabella of Spain. Queen Isabella of Spain was one of the very first venture capitalists. She provided the capital to support Columbus's mission to find new trade routes to the east, except the continents that we live on kind of got in his way, and he discovered the Americas. But what did Christopher Columbus say? I just picked a couple of quotes. By prevailing over obstacles and distractions, one may unfailingly arrive at his chosen goal or destination. What do we learn from that? We learn from that entrepreneuring, startup entrepreneuring, it isn't easy. And it's not supposed to be easy. If it was easy, everybody would do it. But he taught us about prevailing over all the obstacles and keeping our eye on a goal at the end of the day. Queen Isabella spoke to venture investors, or investors in general. What she said is, I will assume the undertaking for my own crown of castle, and I'm ready to pawn my jewels to defray the expenses of it if the treasury should be found inadequate. Now, that talks about investing, but it also talks about commitment. It also talks about being fully engaged in what you're doing, and in her case, fully believing in the entrepreneur that she had decided to support, and willing to risk everything in order to make that happen. Those are very powerful lessons for us as startup entrepreneurs, as investors, and incidentally, as in corporations as well. So who are modern entrepreneurs? I think you know all of these people because you probably know most of these people, maybe not all of these people. You obviously know Bezos, you obviously know Steve Jobs, you obviously know Bill Gates, everyone knows Elon Musk today. But you may not know Mohammed Yunus, and you may not know Nicholas Negroponte. So let's talk about each of them a little bit in context of what they've done and what they've said. First, let's talk about Jeff Bezos, Amazon, and all of the things that go along with Amazon. Jeff's an electrical engineer, interestingly enough. Jeff is one of the most prolific entrepreneurs on the planet today. What did Jeff say? Failure and invention are inseparable twins. I'm going to tell you that you will fail as startup entrepreneurs. It's inevitable that you will fail as startup entrepreneurs. But it's from that failure that you're going to succeed. So expect to fail. Don't beat yourself up. Learn from the failures. I've been involved as a startup entrepreneur and as an investor, and I can't even count how many businesses I've been involved in founding. And I can tell you that there are a bunch of them sitting in boxes in my garage because they didn't work. But we learned something from every one of those companies. Mohammed Yunus. Now, Mohammed Yunus is a really cool guy. I know him because he's involved in the HultPrize. Mohammed Yunus, for those of you that don't know him, won the Nobel Prize for microfinance. He founded and invented the entire concept of microfinance that supports really early stage entrepreneurs, whether in India is where he started, but places like here in Colombia where a family wants to start an empanada stand. or they want to put a soda beside the road someplace. He provides the microfinance to help those people get started. What did Muhammad say? This is all human beings, all of us are born entrepreneurs. And I can tell you, here in Colombia, it goes very deep in the culture, particularly here in this part of Colombia with the Paisa culture. It goes very deep in the Colombian culture. And some get a chance to unleash that capacity. Some never get the chance, never knew that he or she had that capacity and what they could do. Now that again, that's believing in people. But I'm here to tell you that all of you have that capacity if you want to reach inside yourselves and try to find it. Nicholas Negroponte. Now, Nicholas Negroponte is an architect. He's an architect that came from MIT. And the thing that he is most famous for is he's famous for founding the MIT Media Lab. MIT Media Lab is super, super well known. And it's a really unique place. It's a place that combines many disciplines from architecture to finance to technology to chemistry and science. Different ways. It's a laboratory that makes and develops incredibly interesting things. The other thing that Nicholas Negroponte is famous for, and those things he's holding in his hands there, he was the founder of One Laptop Per Child. Now this goes back several years ago, before computers were as ubiquitous to all of us as they are today, and have reached the kinds of price points that computers have reached today. But 10, 12 years ago, when he founded One Laptop Per Child, it was with the dream and the mission to provide a laptop to every child in the world. And those laptops, at that point in time, would sell, if you had to buy them, those laptops would sell for about $80 US. So, and that was a time when a personal computer, things that we take for granted today and things that we carry around in our pockets and our cell phones, when a personal computer was $3,000. And he was providing personal computers to children for the cost of $80 because it was important. So he is a true social entrepreneur. He said, companies can't really see beyond their current customer base. They explicitly and implicitly do things to protect their current customers. And the last person to want real change is your customer. Interesting. That's why most new ideas come from small companies that have nothing to lose. If we have nothing to lose, then we have everything to gain. So again, we're going to talk about companies, but that's one of the reasons that innovations come from you and people like you. Bill Gates, obviously, I needn't say more about Bill Gates, you all know who he is. But what did Bill say? Success is a lousy teacher. It seduces smart people into thinking they can't lose. That's why I say failure is so important to the journey of an entrepreneur. And why failure is something that I wouldn't say you strive for, but failure is something you should expect and be happy when you get it, because it's going to teach you something. Steve Jobs. Steve, God rest his soul, said something really interesting, and this kind of goes to main parameters of value. Steve said, you can't just ask customers what they want and then try to give it to them. Because by the time you get it built, they want something else. They want something new. So again, if we're hunters and we're shooting at a duck flying by, do we shoot at the duck? No. Any of you that know anything about hunting or shooting, you don't shoot at the duck. You shoot ahead of the duck. You don't shoot where the duck is, you shoot where you think the duck is going to be. That was the secret, and still is the secret to this day, of Apple. So, and it's an understanding main parameters of value
and addressing those main parameters of value as a future case, a future condition, not a current condition. Now here's my favorite, crazy Elon Musk. No matter what you think of him, he certainly has made himself well known to the world in general. The guy's brilliant, he's a little eccentric, but he says a couple of things. Some people don't like change, but you need to embrace change because if you don't, the alternative is disaster. If we stay the same, we're going nowhere. So, and that's not a good thing. But his second statement, he gets two quotes because I like him. Being an entrepreneur is like eating glass and staring into the abyss of death. Let that sink in for a minute, because it's really true. It's really, really true. Dr. Alvaro sitting here in the front, his father started a business that became incredibly successful. And I never had the opportunity to meet his father. He's a good friend. I never had the opportunity to meet his father. But I guarantee if I could meet his father was looking into the abyss of death multiple times and ate a lot of glass as he was doing it. But it's true. They're statements. So how's our way of working evolved as entrepreneurs? Again, this is a very high-level perspective of what we do. Innovation used to be a sole task. What you're looking at there is the garage where Hewlett and Packard started Hewlett-Packard. They invented, in that garage, they invented their refraction technology that became what Hewlett-Packard is famous for. So we worked alone. We worked in our garages, we worked in our basements, and to a certain extent, we still do, but it's changed. Today, entrepreneuring is happening all over the place. This is entrepreneuring happens in corporations, invention happens in corporations. It's a team. No one does it by themselves. Being an entrepreneur is a lonely job. You want to have a team with you, helping you pull. The strength of many and the thinking of many is much more powerful than the thinking of one or the thinking of two. We do it in places. This happens to be the Cambridge Innovation Center where our office, or one of our offices is, which is located right there in Kendall Square, right beside MIT. And in that one building, there are over 400 startups operating in that one building at any point in time. And there's also venture firms, and marketing firms, and law firms, and accounting firms, and everything else that supports. And companies send their people there. Some countries send their people there. And companies as well, wanting to be part of an innovation and entrepreneurial ecosystem. And that we're all connected. We're all connected ubiquitously all the time. It's changed. It doesn't cost as much to be an entrepreneur anymore. Things that used to take a development in a software world, things that used to take a development team and would take months to do and hundreds of thousands of US dollars to do it, now it could be done with no-code, low-code solutions and done very quickly. So 3D printing has changed the whole world of prototyping if you're doing physical things. It's a very different place. You can be much faster, much more agile, and do it at less cost. This is something that most people raise their eyebrows on. 50% of all American jobs are created by startups. If you look at the employment in the United States at any given point in time in the last 10 years, and you talk to the people who have jobs, most of them are working for companies that didn't exist 2 years ago. They're startups. 50% of us work in that environment. And we envision that that is the same thing that will happen in Colombia and in Latin America. So probably most of you in this room today at the points and places you are in your careers will leave and do a startup or leave and become part of a startup, because that is the future now. But entrepreneuring is no longer a local activity. It's a global activity. So if you're thinking about starting a company, don't start it for Colombia. Don't start it for Colombia and Peru. Start it for the world. Think big. Think, because that's where the opportunities list. It's no longer a local activity. That's why we came to Colombia and to Latin America in the first place. It was one of these conferences that Rosa invited me to come and speak at that I got an opportunity to understand what the Colombian entrepreneurial community is all about and the capabilities here. And it was from that what was originally started as Accelerate Colombia started in 2018. And since that point in time, we have been providing a path for internationalization to performing Colombian technology companies so they can take advantage of the global markets and the sources of capital that it takes to build a business. It kind of got away from us during the pandemic. I was saying to someone last night, the virus got away and it kind of went all over the world. This idea started right here in Medellin, got away from us, and it spread across Spanish-speaking Latin America. So we now operate in Chile and Mexico, Colombia, with soft landing in the northeastern part of the United States. So we refer to it as a bi-directional entrepreneurial superhighway that connects Spanish-speaking Latin America with the rest of the world via the northeastern part of the United States. And our mission is to provide promising Colombian startup companies that path and that know-how and that experience and that access to take their businesses and let them fly. So that's what we do. It's no longer called Accelerate Colombia. It's now called ScaleUp LatAm. And then the virus spread. I won't go into this, but the virus spread even further because then it spread to Italy. So we're now operating the same business model in Southern Europe as we are across Spanish-speaking Latin America. Oops. Here we go. Okay. I don't know if any of the gentlemen and ladies from the corporations are still in the room, but corporations have a very important role in what you all do, want to do, and what we do. Corporations have a role in entrepreneuring. Corporations, as we'll talk in a few minutes, are very often the exit for the companies that we all build. But corporations do have a role. We're going to talk about that. So, what is corporate entrepreneuring? Because they do it. Corporate entrepreneuring is the creation of a new business, product, or service from inside or outside the organization to generate new strategic revenue growth through entrepreneurial action. So that is what corporate entrepreneuring is defined as. Now, what are the options for corporate entrepreneuring? Corporations really have 4 options. Corporations can do intrapreneuring. Now, intrapreneuring is where some employees of a corporation say, I see an opportunity, and on my own, I'm going to start a business that addresses that opportunity to the benefit of my employer, to the benefit of the corporation. That's what intrapreneuring is. There's corporate entrepreneuring, which is defined differently. Corporate entrepreneuring is where the corporation identifies what they think is an opportunity, and they put together a team of employees to address that opportunity from inside the corporation. So there's a distinct difference between the two, but those are both types of entrepreneuring that occur in the corporate world. Then there's corporate venture capital. Corporate venture capital is where the corporation says, I'm going to put aside some money. Usually it's balance sheet money. I'm going to set aside some money, and I'm going to invest in startups around the community with the hopes that one of those startups should flourish and, in fact, may become strategic to me at some point in time in the future. All of those have been pursued, and all of those are pursued today with varying levels of success. And with very few exceptions, I will say, the corporations have been disappointed in the results that they've gotten from that. There's reasons that we'll talk about in a couple of minutes why corporations have a hard time doing it. So a new concept has developed in the last several years called Venture Studio. And Venture Studio is asterisked here because we're going to talk about it. But Venture Studio is a way by which the corporation accesses the entrepreneurial ecosystem around them. For companies that have already been started, that didn't even think about the fact that the corporation existed, but may in fact become very strategic to the business of that corporation. So they do something called, so there's something called Venture Studios. So, oops, what happened? Okay, so in interest of full disclosure, ScaleUp Labs is a venture studio, it's a group of venture studios that we operate. We operate some independently, we operate some on behalf of corporate sponsors. But venture studios are a way to, an organized, independent way for the corporations to really understand what's going on inside the entrepreneurial community and to access startups there and help those startups to grow, but do it outside the body of the corporation, outside the walls, outside the influence of the corporation. Venture studios are run by professional investors and professional entrepreneurs to take and build these companies out further. The venture studios give the corporations access, it's a little hard to read here, to things that they don't normally see, perspectives that they don't have because they don't have the reach of venture investors or entrepreneurs. That's innovative technology. Catalytic capital, that means capital that comes from other sources, not just from the corporation. And strategic insight. And when those three things come together in the center of this Venn diagram, magic happens. Potentially, magic happens. So these are the benefits that corporations see from venture studio activities. All of you, I venture to guess, no pun intended, are going to be exposed to venture studio at some point in time. But that's an important aspect of how corporations are accessing the entrepreneurial market. So who's in the ecosystem? I'm going to go really fast here in the interest of time. There's things like the Harvard Innovation Lab and the MIT Startup Exchange in our backyard. There's places like that here. There are non-profit, highly specialized incubators that provide incubation for some certain types of companies. There's just a couple of them mentioned here. The Cambridge Innovation Center runs an incubator where our offices are. Greentown Labs, we have an office at Greentown Labs. Greentown Labs is the largest clean tech incubator in the world. It's located in a suburb of Boston. There's, I mentioned the HultPrize before. There are socially oriented organizations that support the entrepreneurial ecosystem, such as the HultPrize does. They're not the only one. There's government. There's government activity. I have a very strong opinion about government activity. But there's government activity where governments, and certainly the Colombian government, is active to varying degrees of success in trying to support the entrepreneurial community here through embedding things like Durante, in the national sense, Impulsa, Sena, Confama, various ways that the national governments recognize the contribution that the entrepreneurial world can make to economic development. But they do it with various levels of success. Sorry. We talked about corporations that are involved in it. And then obviously there are the accelerators, some local, some regional, some national. I represent this Accelerate Colombia, ScaleUp LatAm. One of the speakers this afternoon represents Techstars. But they are a way that provides an organized method for the startups to get access to markets and knowledge and experience and support, as well as capital to grow. Those are all part of the entrepreneurial ecosystem that will be important to you as startup entrepreneurs. So, I come from Boston. I'm going to give a brief commercial on Boston. Boston is one of the top 3 entrepreneurial ecosystems in the world. There's some very distinct reasons why that is. One is that within a 16-kilometer radius of the center of Boston, there are 90 colleges and universities. Think about that, 90. Some of them are some of the best in the world, like Harvard and MIT and Boston University and Northeastern and Boston College and on and on and on and on. UMass. But there's a great deal of intellect that occurs there, just like here at the Universidad de Medellin and at Medellin General. There's not as many, but there's a great deal of intellect. Colombia has a superior secondary education system. There's your capital. There's over 100 investment firms. There's over 100 of me in Boston right now. And in Boston, last year alone, just Boston, there was $21 billion in 2022 invested in startups. $21 billion. If I add New York to that, because New York is really part of the northeastern ecosystem, New York and Boston are so close together that they're almost inseparable, that number goes up by more than twice. So let's say there's $50 billion of capital invested in startups in 2022. Now let's contrast that with Colombia and with Latin America. In all of Latin America, in 2022, and this includes Brazil, in all of Latin America, there was roughly in 2022, $7 billion of capital invested in all of Latin America. In 2021, it was roughly $15 billion. So you can see that between 2021 and 2022, there was a 49% drop in the amount of venture investment that occurred. Now, there's a lot of geopolitical reasons behind that, but let's look at Colombia. In Colombia, in 2022, there was about $1.5 billion invested in startups. I'm sorry, no, $1.1 billion in 2022 invested in venture money, invested in startups last year. The year before was $1.5 billion. So as you can see, the drop in Colombia was not as severe. It was only 22% or 23%, something like that. That's good. Now, smaller numbers, that's good. But that doesn't tell the whole story. Between 2021, at roughly $1.8 billion invested in startups, venture invested in startups. In 2022, the number of companies that got invested in almost doubled in Colombia. So the amount of investment that each company got was smaller, but the number of companies that were supported by the venture community here was larger. So there's a positive statement there. And of course, Boston has a lot of support. We talked about some of that before. This is The building in the back is our office building. This is in the square out in front of our office building. Kendall Square is known as the most innovative square mile on the planet. There's so much that happens there, you have to really come to appreciate it. But if I go on the upper floor of our office building and I look out, I can see Amazon's artificial intelligence world headquarters, Google's artificial intelligence world headquarters, Microsoft's artificial intelligence world headquarters. Everywhere I look, I see nothing but veterans from all of the biotech and life sciences companies that are located within that square mile of where that sign is located. It really is a very interesting place, and all of you, I hope, will have the opportunity to come and experience it at some point in time in your careers. Let's just go super fast here. What's the startup funding life cycle? Because here in Colombia, venture is hard to get. The venture community, venture capital system is nascent. It's young, it's small. It doesn't operate quite the way that we do in the United States. And again, I will give you one more disclosure. We run a Latin American venture fund called the ScaleUp LatAm Venture Fund. It's domiciled in Chile. But we do invest in all of Spanish-speaking Latin America. But a lot of companies here finance their companies on bank debt. You cannot build a company on debt. You can't do it. Dr. Alvarez shaking his head here. You cannot build your company on debt because you don't have the capital to cause the company to grow. You spend all of your money that you make financing the debt, also, paying back the debt and paying the load on the debt. You need to finance a company with other people's money in the form of equity. So this is the traditional United States startup funding life cycle, where all companies, get my buttons right. Oh, here we go. All companies always start with your money, your own money. It comes out of your wallet, your credit card, your bank account, wherever you get it, it's your own money. Because you're the first person that's going to bet in yourself. Somebody else isn't going to bet in you until they know you have. Money can then come from friends and family. That's the next route. Is friends, family, I refer to them as friends, family, and fools. Friends and family are the ones that are going to say, I really believe in Camilla. And I'm going to put some money behind Camilla sitting right here. I'm going to put some money behind what Camilla was doing. And then it moves on to crowdfunding activities, startup capital that comes from incubators and accelerators, venture capital, venture studios, and ultimately, every company has to have an exit. There has to be a way for the investors to get their money back, plus. And so the exits today, most often, are not initial public offerings, although they still happen, but through acquisitions. And the acquisitions often come from those corporations that say, I really like what that company is doing, and I want that for mine. And that's where the exits usually come from, is by that. My job, the job of one of the other speakers this afternoon, well, actually two of the other speakers this afternoon, is to help the companies get to the point where so much value has been created in them that they are ready for exit, and give them that path to exit and support them in doing that. That's what a venture investor does. So, I've been doing this for a while, and I've learned some important lessons that I'm going to share with all of you today. Start a business, not a startup. You're building a business. Businesses have a path to profit. Otherwise, it's a hobby. So if you're starting something, make sure that you know how you're going to make money. And that should be your principal focus as you do that. Ignore the real world. Why? because it's a place where ideas and foreign concepts and new approaches will always lose. The real world, when I say the real world isn't a place, it's an excuse for not trying. I can promise you, if any one of you were to raise your hand and say, I have a startup, or I have an idea for a startup, 90% of the people in this room are going to tell you why it's not going to work. Your friends will tell you why it's a bad idea. Your family will tell you why it's a bad idea. They'll tell you it's not going to work. But you have to ignore that, because it's about you. It's not about them. And you have to believe in it. We have to believe in ourselves. Embrace risk. I said we're going to talk about corporations. Corporations manage risk because they have something to lose. As entrepreneurs, we exploit risk. Risk is our friend. So this is why corporations need to do things like venture studios and so forth in order to build new products and services. Because the corporations are finely tuned to manage the risk in the corporation because they have something to lose. So they do everything they can to manage it. And they manage it down so far that there is no opportunity for return. And when a corporation does try to do a startup inside the body of the corporation, the risk antibodies the corporations have all developed see that as a foreign invader in the system, and they attack it. They attack it with the purpose of killing it. So that's why corporations don't need things like venture studios and all of you that aren't in corporations to help them to provide all of these new innovations and these new products that are going to exploit main parameters of value. So risk is what creates the opportunities. Two most important questions. There's two questions that startup entrepreneurs all have to ask themselves. These are the two. If you remember nothing else from this talk today, remember these two questions. And they're simple. There's two questions, and there's only 4 words in those questions. So what? Who cares? So what? Who cares? If you're going to do something, you better make sure you're doing it for a purpose and for a reason, and that somebody cares. So the startup entrepreneur has to ask themselves those questions and be brutally honest with the answers to those questions. So think about it. So what? Who cares? I'm putting my whole life into this. Does anybody care? In order to answer those questions honestly, you have to be prepared to look in the mirror, look at yourself in the mirror, and admit that maybe your baby is ugly. Nobody wants to admit their baby is ugly. But you may have to admit that your baby is ugly. And when that, and if you say, you know, I really liked it, but it's not, nobody cares, then do something else. Oh, okay. I forgot there's more build on that. Live it or leave it. Live it or leave it. Standing for something is not about writing it down. It's about believing it and doing it, living it. So, a story I would often tell to new entrepreneurs or to a company that we're considering investing in, or a company that we are interviewing for potential inclusion in the startup cohort, is I'll say, are you a chicken? Are you a pig? No. What are you talking about, Gregg? Chicken? Pig? What do you mean by that? And I said, well, think about a breakfast of huevos and chicharron. The chicken, she's involved, but the pig is fully committed to that breakfast. So are you a chicken or are you a pig? So live it or leave it. Stand for it. No time is no excuses. Startup entrepreneurs live in a world of no excuses. Time is not an excuse. There's always enough time if you spend it right. And if you're in constant fear of doing things perfectly, they'll never happen. And And every startup entrepreneurs that we've supported, the ones that fail, the ones that fail first, are the ones that are saying, well, it's not quite right. I'm going to wait a little longer. I'm going to work on this MVP a little bit more. And they fail because perfect never happens. It's, I was saying to someone last night, perfect is that element on the periodic table that they call unobtainium. It never happens. If you're not growing, you're shrinking. Growth, not profits, is the primary objective. That is a lesson about how an American venture firm invests versus how a traditional venture firm invests in other parts of the world. We don't care about your profits. We care about your growth. Because your growth is what's going to create value in the company and produce an opportunity for an exit, for a good exit for all of us. So U.S. investors want you to fund the growth of the business. Profits will come later. So that's what we focus on as investors. Your initial funding is going to come from you. You can't start a business on other people's money, but you can grow a business on other people's money. Failure is inevitable, but it's not a rite of passage. We talked a little bit about failure earlier on. So it's not a rite of passage. Learn from your successes, not your failures. Failures are usually better teachers than successes. Think about the quote that came from, what's that from? I think that might have been Gates, I don't remember which one it was. So, Mother Nature is an entrepreneur. Mother Nature doesn't dwell on what didn't work when she's evolving a new life form or a new plant or whatever else. Mother Nature has many failures, which is, I know why that didn't work. I'm going to change it and try again. So evolution is truly, Mother Nature and evolution is truly a living example of that particular entrepreneurial life lesson. But when you do fail, do it fast. Do it really, really fast. And because, when you see that things are going wrong, there's a reason you're usually right. So decide, am I going to stop? Am I going to pivot? What am I going to do in order to not let this failure consume me or my business? Sometimes it's okay to say it's not going to work and put it in the box in my garage. Well, my garage, not your garage, not my garage. Cartoons are also helpful. On the other hand, you need to know when to let go of a bad idea. So, you know when to let go of a bad idea. Planning is guessing. Plans let the past drive the future. The best way to plan is to act. Don't sit around and say, I can figure this all out. Business plans to us are useless. Because it's the day that business plan comes off the printer, or into the PDF, it goes into the PDF, it's obsolete. Only the future is going to drive the path. Only what you learn drives the future. Don't let business planning get in your way. There is no such thing as original ideas. I guarantee you, anything that you thought of or you're doing today, somebody else has already done it or is doing it. There is no such thing as an original idea. So when an entrepreneur comes and says, we don't have any competition, that's when we say, thank you very much, good luck to you now, have a good luck with your business. Is this world full of smart people, and there's room for all of you to build your businesses. It's the innovation that tweaks around those small ideas. And if the person that thought of you before failed, then you can learn from their failure too, and then you don't make the same mistakes. Happy band of volunteers. This is a very American thing. We talked about not doing the business alone and teamwork. Find people that believe in what you're doing and are attracted to your vision and want to be part of it. You don't have to pay them. You don't have to pay them. They want to learn from, I'm getting the fast out, You don't have to pay them in most cases. They want to learn from you. There's got to be something in it for them, obviously, whether it's resume building, an opportunity to be employed in the future with you, or something else. To find a happy band of volunteers who can't do this stuff alone is way too hard and way too long. Okay? No, I just don't get past through that. Don't think you are the company. My strategy has always been to surround myself with good people and then duck down and sneak out the back when no one's looking. The CEO is not the company. The founder is not the company. Companies are made up of groups of people, not one. And the CEO needs to know when, and the founders need to know when that's the case. Pick a fight. Competition is super good. Competition is really good. If you have an enemy, it's motivational as hell. So pick a fight. Always be in a fight. Always have your fists up and ready to punch somebody. That's how you think as a startup entrepreneur to be successful. And don't get carried away with your valuation estimates or fall in love with your idea. I have a great idea for a startup company. All I need is a seed investor and an engineer to do all the work. Well, it seems to be what you really have. The economic term for that is nothing. Don't fall in love with your idea. You know, listen to others. Work with others. Get a life, working all the time. Startups are very easy to fall into the trap of working all the time. Balance your life around it. You'll be a better founder and you'll be a better operator if you manage to find a balance between your passion, your family, your life. Sales, I think this is the last one. Sales is not a department. Accounting is a department. Finance is a department. But sales is not a department. Sales is an activity. And I'm sure that when you meet startup entrepreneurs, they will tell you they are always selling. Doesn't matter what their role is in the company. They're always selling, and everybody on the team is always selling. So you're going to talk to Camillo and Maria Pilar here in a minute. They will tell you they're startup founders that were part of our very first Accelerate Colombia cohort. I have a huge amount of respect for them. And they will tell you that they are always selling all the time. All the time. And so is everybody else around them, selling all the time. And with that, since I got the hook, I'll say muchas gracias. Hope that there's something here. Thank you. And if you want to talk to me, you want to connect, that's my information and my LinkedIn and all those guys. Okay? Good luck to all of you. Thank you very much.